Okay, morning, Mr. Bear. This is probably the best I can do. The screen recording device didn't go so well. Anyway, the Separate Amenities Act of 1953. It was an act brought in by D.F. Malan and was one of the big laws that basically was the foundation for apartheid. That and the Group Areas Act. Now, what I learned was quite interesting. The law was brought in by D.F. Malan, was one of the big names in the whole apartheid thing, bringing in the Group Areas Act and the Separate Amenities Act. And the thing is, we don't exactly think about it in the wider perspective. I mean, we've always kind of been told, hey, there was something called apartheid. And it's just basically been something everyone had heard about, but now that we were learning about it, it just brought in so much more context that I had no idea was there. And obviously, if you are going to separate people, they are going to find out differently. Like the white person that I interviewed had found out about apartheid through lunchtime discussions with his father, who opposed apartheid. And however, non-whites found out the hard way by being scolded out, or the police would catch them at facilities that they didn't exactly know were separated. And the whole idea and people getting a concept of apartheid actually only came at ages 6 and 10 and some even 22, knowing that it was unfair. But somehow it had always been around for these people, and for those who were alive at the time that the law was being made, it was again a discussion of many supper time topics. Now, about the law, there were exceptions to the law, however. If you were, let's say, a diplomat from Sudan or any other country, you could sit in the white area. Or if you produced a certificate, you could also sit in the white area. But if you didn't, the punishment for this was a couple of months in jail and a fine. Now, there were situations at amenities, because public places are hard to control, beaches, trains, and all of that. There was even a situation where workers would be told to use a different entrance because they were colored. And there was also displays of public beatings at the area. And but for white people, this was kind of different. They would see it through the eyes of others, through public beatings, and also as the domestics had to travel far in order to get to work, which could be seen by him. Okay, there were, however, interactions with other races in apartheid. There was an interesting thing that I found out was that the Joburg Zoo was the only unsegregated place in South Africa, because at its release, it said it was open to all South Africans. Most people only managed to make friends with other races at university level, where they weren't working for them, they weren't being beaten by them, they were having lunch with them on the university campus. However, for others, education had played a huge role in the relationship, as some blacks didn't study further, and the relationship wasn't highly maintained between the white and the black man because of the education gap between them. Now, an interesting thing about apartheid, again, I'll say it was the Joburg Zoo, which was the only unsegregated place, but South Africa was kind of like a world where it was the Nazi Germany brainchild that was inspired by American colonialism and the Jim Crow laws. It was inevitably how Nazi Germany would have looked if Hitler hadn't killed himself. Now, one question I had asked, which was kind of unrelated, and I am running out of time here, was, it was better under apartheid. Many people say this, but they sometimes forget the demographics that are at hand, like an advantage in economics wise, and there's a huge disadvantage with the youth unemployment rate, and the people aren't exactly thinking this through properly, because it benefits different people, and this benefit can be seen as rather not a separation but a flaw in society. And this is basically the bibliography. I had read the Separate Amenities Act of 1953 archive, the accounts of apartheid by Gert Bam, who was an activist during the time and works at the Department of Amenities today. Andre van der Berg, white man who was a lecturer at a university, and Tosh, a domestic worker and pastor at a church. The other source that I'd gotten it from of the accounts of apartheid newspapers at the time was the New York Times. Thank you, sir.